It's been a quiet summer, really, overall, unless you're Aston Villa. They have been busy, haven't they, over the last few weeks, of course, with an eye on that Champions League campaign coming up next season. Onana confirmed today, £50 million signing from Everton, along, of course, with 7 other signings they have made over the last few weeks. Mark, let's start with Onana. What sort of player are they getting?
A really good midfielder, you know, box-to-box midfielder, did really well for Everton during his time there. Him and Decore were pretty difficult to beat at times in midfield, even though Everton struggled. I think those two were key players. But I think Onana will give them energy. He'll give them, you know, a player that can improve. And I think he's a good sign. You know, Villa are in the Champions League next season, which is why they're making so many signings. But, you know, they've got to boost the squad. And I think Onana is a good addition to that squad. And, you know, a guy like Unai Emery will not allow the club to sign players that don't fit into his system. So, you know, he's quite tight with Monchi, the sporting director, so I think this will be done in tandem with Monchi as well. So I think it's a good signing.
It's interesting, Shaq. Obviously, Newcastle in the Champions League last season. And we saw them make 3 big signings, of course, one of them which Delali was banned because of his gambling. So you're down to 2. Is what Villa are doing right and more numbers coming in?
I'd like to think that if I'm in a team and we finish top 4, I know Champions League football is coming, I want to be a part of that team. I want to reward the team that got us into Champions League football. And I think that was, but you have to strengthen your squad, and I think that was a lot of the thinking around Newcastle last year. But then the games and the whole new environment just kind of caught up with Newcastle. But you look at Villa, and as much as there's a lot of signings there, there's only 2 players over, 35 million.
Right.
Let's be honest, anything under is, in today's market, in Premier League terms, is no problem. And a lot of young, well, with the exception of Ross Barkley, a lot of young players are 22 and under, 23 and under. And so that, for me, kind of has a different feel from buying 8 or 9 players at 50 or 60 million each. This is more about boosting the squad, making sure you've got enough bodies, making sure they're inexpensive enough that it doesn't really hurt you long term, and young enough that there is some sell-on value. Because again, you could buy a bench for 20 million in you know, hot seat for 20 million in Premier League terms. No, that's not a big outlay for.
How does that analogy work?
Not great. I said bench, I was like, oh no, that's not what I was thinking. I could have gone with anything else, a pie, anything else.
What a lovely bench. Let's move on swiftly, shall we, Mark? Joao Felix.
Yeah, well, this is an interesting one. I mean, people are getting excited about Joao Felix, but let's not forget he had a difficult spell at Chelsea, so he's been in the Premier League and he didn't absolutely cut it then. So, you know, but he's got Champions League experience, and obviously Atletico need him off the books, but Villa have got issues as well. I mean, Felipe Coutinho's still got 2 years left of his contract at Aston Villa. They've just loaned him out to Vasco da Gama, so they'll be a little bit wary of committing a lot of money to a player that had a great future in the past and hasn't quite realised it. But I do think that, you know, obviously Ollie Watkins is the main man at Villa, and he will remain that. But, you know, Joao Felix will come in and add some certainly top-class quality, but it depends on the fee, really, because if you're talking £50 million plus for a player that's had 3 or 4 in different seasons, that is a lot to commit, especially for a club at Aston Villa. So I think that one is a possibility rather than a probability, to be honest.
Is he any good, Stevie?
In short
it's not such an easy...
Sometimes.
It seems like a strange question, but it's true. Is he as good as we think he's supposed to be? No. There is no doubt.
So then how good is he?
Well, and you see it. You keep hearing us talking about there's players that get coaches sacked.
Right.
And he falls in that category. He's a guy that will show flashes of absolute genius or have a couple of games on the trot where he's like, fantastic, and you think, right, here we go, I've got it, we've seen it, and then it disappears. And I don't know how to answer your question. He's got ability. He's got ability that 80% of the other players on the planet don't have. But unfortunately, he doesn't know how to use it consistently. And that would be the right answer.
OK, Mario, let me ask you in a different way then. Has he got enough ability to gamble on if you're Aston Villa?
Mark highlighted a good point, and I think what Stevie said, it comes back to what he did at Chelsea. He started off well, and he dropped off really quickly. So bringing him back to England, it will be a tough shout. And because I don't know if Felix, English football will suit him. Because we're talking about a kid that had an extraordinary start of his career when he was at Benfica. Then makes the move to Atletico, where everybody was saying, hey, other people were interested too. Go to Atletico, Simeone, drilled him a little bit, he wanted out. Went to, then he had the journey. He had Chelsea, Barcelona. So for me, the question comes, can Felix come back to the feeling what he had when he was at Benfica? If that is not the case, and if Emre, he can think what he wants, but if he can bring him to that standard, and that's what I think why his eyes are on him. But if he cannot bring him to his standard, no. I don't think England might be a suitable league for him because it's tougher than the way he wants to play.
It's down to Emery, isn't it, Shaq?
Absolutely it is. And listen, a couple of things here. I thought how Stevie summed Joao Felix up as a player who will get Manchester sacked is absolutely spot on. For a couple of things. Again, for the reasons that Stevie says, but coming into Aston Villa, one, you question the price. Don't get me telling you what you can get for 20 million.
That's a lovely bench, isn't it?
Yeah, it'll make sense in a minute. That analogy will make sense in a minute. Also, the bigger consideration for the dressing room is what wages is he on, because he's going to be on a lot of money.
Right.
So he
and
comes
people
in.
are aware of that.
Exactly. So he comes in. Yes, flashes of brilliance, but then 6 or 7 games where he's not offering anything, and then everybody else is kind of looking around thinking, well, hold on, I could be on this money, and making those kinds of demands. And that's as unsettling to the dressing room, and that is nothing to do with Unai Emery. If that starts happening and players start questioning what's happening within that dressing room, there is very little that Unai Emery can do to get that under control.